I'm gonna wait for you guys to tune in. Sorry I'm late. Some days are just very busy. But because I promised I was gonna come on live today, I'm coming on. Come on in. Hi, Miss Crystals. Come on in. Invite your friends to join. Somebody already jumped right into it. It says, I have a question. Yeah, type your question. I'm going to try and get into all the questions. Hello, YouTube. Hello, Facebook. Come on in. I'm trying a new camera today on YouTube and Facebook. So I'm curious to see what it looks like once I'm done because my computer camera is terrible. Just gonna wait for some of you guys to tune in. Share this video so your friends can join us live. Hi, Ever Blessed. Good afternoon. Come on in. Let me start by introducing myself. My name is 𝐂𝐻𝐸𝐻𝐸. I'm an immigration lawyer. I represent clients all over the United States and internationally with their family immigration matter. We have offices in Atlanta, Georgia, and Florida, Orlando, Florida, but we still represent clients all over the United States. Your location is not a problem. We have clients probably in all 50 states. So feel free to call us. Our number here is 407, which I'm going to try and type in here while some of you are still joining in, 407-995-6567, or you can send a WhatsApp to 404. Oh, look at my smartphone already picking up my lingo. 404 333, guys, sorry, I'm trying to talk and type at the same time, 8751. I'm going to pin this on Facebook, not Facebook, on Instagram. You should be able to see it on there. If you're on YouTube or if you're on Facebook, you should be able to see it. It's scrolling through the ticker. If not, it's in my profile. It's also in my profile on Instagram, so you can see there as well. Please feel free to ask your questions. If I can get to your questions, I'll be happy to answer them. But today I really wanted to talk about what to do, when you have a pendant-based, marriage-based case, your spouse is filing for you for your green card. And, it turns out that either you're now dealing with abuse, or you were always dealing with abuse, but you didn't know you had any other options. So you stick it out because, we do see a lot of clients who, when I ask them, if all of this is so atrocious, all of this, why did you stay? And so for a lot of people, they feel like they've been tortured so much and that they might as well just stay and get their green card. But here's the good news. The good news is you don't have to stay in an abusive marriage to get your green card. If you're married to a U.S. citizen or a green card holder, you can get your green card based on the unfortunate abuse that you're experiencing without staying in the marriage. People ask, well, can I divorce the person? Or my spouse is threatening to divorce me. We've got a pending case. Yes, divorce them if that is your choice. I can't tell you whether or not you should divorce your spouse because, of course, divorce is something that's deeply personal, but you have that option to do that. Okay. If this is your first time joining us, definitely comment in here. Let me give you a shout out. So if you're new here or if you're new to the topic of VAWA, let me quickly explain that. VAWA is Violence Against Women's Act. And this is an act that, even though the name says violence against women, it's for men, it's for women, it's for same-sex couples, it's for children, and it's for parents. When you typically are eligible for this is if you're experiencing abuse from your U.S. citizen spouse, your green card holder spouse, your U.S. citizen parent, your green card holder parent, or if you're a child, if you're a parent and your 21-year-old or older U.S. citizen is abusing you. So these are the people that are typically eligible for a 10-year green card based on VAWA. Okay, so that's first and foremost. If you're a parent and your child is a green card holder, you're not eligible. Your child has to be a U.S. citizen for you to be eligible. So a lot of times people ask, well, my spouse is abusive. Like, it's just that I don't have any proof that he hits me and stuff like that. With VAWA, abuse is not only physical, okay? Sometimes the mental stuff or the words spoken out of people's mouth or the actions that they take make them abusive. And then sometimes people submit petitions with these abusive spouses, and let's say it's time for the interview, or for each step of the immigration process, they start getting threats. Okay, I'm not going to show up to the interview if you don't have sex with me. I'm not going to show up to the interview if you don't give me $5,000. I'm not going to show up to the interview if you don't buy me that Range Rover. Yes, I had a client where she wanted a Range Rover and she was not going to the interview if she didn't get that Range Rover. That person actually got their green card. And I remember the officer was very pissed to find that out when we went to the interview, and he just brought it up. But anyway, what was I saying? Yeah, so like when they start to make those threats, in addition to everything else that's happening, and part of that is, it's not just telling you I can't go to the interview or whatever it is. It is the level of fear and anxiety that it invokes in an immigrant. For most immigrants, obviously to them being here is better from a survival standpoint, from a financial standpoint, than wherever or whatever country you're coming from. And so the idea of being deported, if let's say, you're working here and you take care of your family, your children, your cousins, your relatives, and then they're telling you they're going to deport you, which cuts your source of income, or just different things, that causes emotional and mental anguish. That causes trauma. That causes anxiety. Anxiety is a form of abuse if the person that's giving you anxiety is your spouse. So in those situations, when those happen, you do have an option. And you do have a way out. And that way out is to submit a VAWA petition. How it works when you already have a case pending is typically, we can ask USCIS to please allow us to hold your pending case. That's the case you have with your spouse in what we call abeyance. It just means just discontinue processing this case with the spouse. And we're going to transfer this case to the VAWA unit and merge this together. Okay. One thing that concerns a lot of people, and a lot of people ask, is, will my spouse know? Like, what if my spouse finds out? So here's the thing: USCIS cannot disclose that to your spouse. Okay, they can't disclose that to your spouse. Typically, there are a few strategies and things USCIS will do. Before I get into the strategy and some of the things that I've observed in my own experience, the USCIS does as a way to not get the other spouse thinking that, anything is happening. I want to say that abeyance is discretionary, right? And when I say discretionary, I mean that not all officers are going to grant it. And I want to make sure that you understand that, because it's not a right that is entitled to you. They have to agree or not. But even if they don't agree, all is not lost. If they deny your case, because sometimes, let's say you've already done your case and USCIS is doing their investigation, or they sent you an NOID and they're like, nope, we're denying the case. You can still submit a VAWA petition and just submit a brand new application. The two inconveniences are, of course, that you have to pay a new filing fee, and you have to file for a new work permit, which, as you know, work permit takes time, but all is not lost. So I want to make sure that you guys understand that even if USCIS doesn't approve the abeyance request, all is not lost. You can file a new adjustment of status and attach it to your case. Okay. Some of the things that I've seen in my own experience that USCIS has done as a way to protect victims when they have this. I had a case where this person was an abuser and threatened, that they're not showing up to the interview, blah, 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 and that they're going to sabotage the case. We deal with so many interesting cases. It's so interesting. It's scary sometimes, but it's definitely interesting knowing that you're helping people get out of this really horrible situation. And so, my client shows up, he shows up to the interview, and lo and behold, when he gets to the interview in the waiting room, who does he see there? His wife, right? At this point, the client was going there to submit the abeyance packet that we had given him. And, of course, his wife showed up. And then, so after doing some SOS with my client, and strategically planning it, my client went to the front office. If you've been to USCIS, like there's usually somewhere where you go and you get your ticket before you go in. And, he goes there and, he tells them, my lawyer said I should give this to you. Like, I was still on the phone with him because I said, keep me on the phone. Let's see what happens. And he gives it to them in front. And then the supervisor comes out and says, what we're going to do is that we'll give you about 15 minutes. And then in about 15 minutes, we'll come out and we'll say that the interview has been canceled. And that will reschedule it. So that is an example of something that he did to protect the client. Some other times, what USCIS will do is they will actually send an I-130 denial letter, just so that the petitioner is the U.S. citizen or green card holder, is like, okay, well, they've already denied my case. They've already denied the case. Oh, sorry for you, but they don't know that their 485 is still pending. So that's what they do, because USCIS will not really send you a letter saying, oh, we've approved your abeyance. Their lack of action usually tells you that, they've approved the abeyance. Sometimes they will transfer it, or sometimes they will leave it at the field office. Depends on where, all of this all depends on, one, the field office. It depends on where your case is. Every single office, and even in every single office, every officer does it differently. But, for my clients who qualify for an abeyance, I always want to try for an abeyance because I want to save them the money from paying a new filing fee, and because I don't want them to be without their work permit. And, we even try to be strategic depending on where the case is when we choose to send the abeyance request. So these are some ways that USCIS tries to protect, or sometimes if it's an abeyance and they know that there's a possibility that the U.S. citizen might not show up. Even though they've received that abeyance request, they will still schedule you for an interview. And then when our clients go to the interview, we still present the same abeyance again, and then they deny the I-130, and usually they say they denied it because you didn't show up to the interview, but again, they don't disclose that. So don't be afraid to submit a VAWA petition if you qualify for one. There are rules against USCIS, disclosing and financial fees for disclosing any information, because this is about your life. And of course, your attorney, has attorney-client privilege, so of course your spouse is not going to hear it from them. So that's basically my spiel on submitting a VAWA petition while your case is pending. And what typically happens is once you do the VAWA petition and they approve the VAWA, then everything else is sent back, to the field office where you're located to now do your interview, and then you get your green card, God willing. Okay, so let me take some questions. I see there's a lot. I might not be able to get to all of them, but I will try and catch as many as I can. 𝐂𝐀𝐋𝐋 said nice grades. Thank you. Can an annulment affect a 10-year green card? Well, what is your 10-year? Who gave you your 10-year green card? Was it your spouse? And what was the reason for the annulment? Who filed the annulment? So there's just too many things that we don't know to determine how it works. But since you brought up annulment, let me talk about annulments in the context of VAWA. A lot of times what abusers do is that they want to invalidate the marriage so that they know that you cannot go and get your status without them. So they will force you to an annulment. But here's what I would say to you. Fight it. Do not, if you know that you're married, because here are the grounds for annulment in most states. I'm not a family lawyer, so nobody call me about divorce advice, because that's not what I do. I do immigration. But generally, it's like fraud, that you've not consummated your marriage, or mental incapacity for a lot of annulment cases. So, you know, if you know that those things are not occurring in your marriage or didn't happen in your marriage, don't get an annulment. But if, let's say, you don't know, you never watched this live video. That's why I always tell you guys, share this video. You never know who you're going to be helping. But let's say you never watched this live video and you didn't know, you go sign an annulment. One can make the argument, you know, that your lack of knowledge and your spouse being like a calculated and conniving person, you know, you signed these papers, but that you did have a legitimate marriage. Okay. How hard is it to get dual citizenship from here and Zimbabwe? I was born in the United States. I only practice immigration law and law at all in the United States. I can't tell you what Zimbabwe's citizenship requirement, but I can tell you that in the United States, you are allowed to have dual citizenship. So what you want to confirm is the country where you're from, whether dual citizenship is allowed. Okay. So is it, I think you're trying to say, is it okay to remarry while waiting on a pending removal of conditions that is pending from a previous marriage? I mean, technically you could, you know, you could get married. But if your case is pending, so is it pending then because you're divorced? Or did you already so again, I have some follow-up questions. Unlike in a VAWA case where when your VAWA is pending, you can't remarry somebody else, you're not penalized for remarrying when you're in a conditional green card situation, as long as you can prove that your original marriage was a bona fide marriage. But you know, if your stuff is pending, are you filing for removal on the basis of divorce? Or are you filing a joint removal because, you know, you can't be filing a joint removal and be marrying somebody else? So all of that, we need to know all of that. Okay. So McDaniel said, is it possible to file to expedite to obtain work permit for adjustment of status? My daughter did a brain surgery and my wife is the only one working. I need to get a job to assist her. Well, first of all, let me say, I am so sorry. Like, that is really scary, one, and stressful. And I wish your daughter a speedy recovery. But in that case, you can certainly try, and you can also provide documentation. Like, you know, I would provide documentation of your daughter's surgery. I will provide documentation of all the expenses that are associated with it. And I will also provide documentation on your wife's schedule, because you can make an argument that because your daughter had brain surgery, your wife probably cannot even work as much as she's working, because who's going to take care of the child, right? Or, well, I mean, you could technically take care of the child, but you could still make the argument that, you know, just trying to healthcare bills, they're expensive. But I definitely think that you can make an argument. Is it going to work? I don't know, but you don't have any harm in trying. So definitely try to expedite it in that case. Okay. Carrie says, can I apply to VAWA if I go back to my home country? Well, you have to show that you lived with your abuser here in the US. So if you lived with your abuser here in the US, sure. Okay. All right. Let me take some on YouTube. Oh my goodness. I don't have my mouse today, so I'm a bit slow scrolling through this thing. Okay. This is, let me start from here. My VAWA I-360 was approved in August of last year. I filed my 360 and 485 together. My case was never transferred to the local field office. When I checked my 485, it said it was received by Vermont Service Center. What should I do and how long do I have to wait until it gets transferred? You definitely need a lawyer. You definitely need a lawyer because they have to go do a VAWA, a hotline inquiry, and it's only an attorney hotline. You can only do that through being a lawyer and showing, you know, proof that you're a lawyer. So that's what I would say, because, you know, the first thing is to figure out where exactly your case is. From August to August is a year. So I would say that's a long time from the approval. So you want to just make sure that, you know, they didn't just forget your stuff in the pile. Because the annoying but also good thing about VAWA is good because it protects you from your abuser. But the annoying thing is when you have a VAWA, you can't just call. You know, you have to go through certain channels as a way to protect you. So that's what I would say you should do. So Adela says, please, how short is 10-year green card after getting work authorization via VAWA? So are you asking, so I guess, I don't know if you're asking one of two questions. If the question is, am I sure that the type of green card you will get is a 10-year green card? If that's the question with the VAWA, yes, it is a 10-year green card. If the question is, if you get a work permit, will I be guaranteed an approval of a VAWA case? Absolutely not. There's no guarantee. It depends on your case and how strong your case is, your ability to persuade the person who's reviewing your case. Okay. Samantha says, how long does it normally take after responding to an intent to deny notice from USCIS for USCIS to respond? And do they send you a notice that they received it? Oh, excuse me, sorry. So here's the thing. There's no standard of how long. I can have a notice of intent to deny that our argument was just so hot, so solid, that like a month later, they're like, okay, we approve you. You know, some others, it could be 6 months. Some others, it could be a year. So it just really depends on the case. So nobody can tell you. And it also depends on the field office and the officer that's working on your case and their caseload. Sometimes also, this is another area where USCIS is not consistent. Sometimes they will upload on there, we've received your response. They're not going to mail you anything if that's what you're asking. You're not getting any mails. They're just going to upload it on your USCIS case status, or sometimes they won't, you know. So whenever anything is mailed to USCIS, it's always important to make sure that you're mailing it to the right address and that you have tracking and proof of delivery. When you mail something and it's like, okay, you know, it's going to get there in 2 days, make sure in 2 days or 3 days or whatever, you go get a screenshot of it and save that somewhere. This is very important. This is very important because if you mail stuff, let me use USPS, the US Postal Service, for example, after, is it 3 months or 4 months, it disappears from the web. It will just say, like, if you type in your receipt notice, like, let's say you don't notice that you've not heard anything for 4 months. At that point, if you never captured your receipt that you sent it and it was delivered, you will not be able to find it anymore because they remove it from their platform and nobody in the post office can help you with this. How do I know? It's happened to one of my clients. It happened to one of my clients a few years ago, and we learned you should always get and save. Like, so even though we have the tracker, but you should still save the delivery, okay? Luckily for us, you know, USCIS allowed us to resend again, but at that point, USCIS, before it got to USCIS, they had already made a decision, but, and that client was approved. But, so that's how I know this, so you should always do that, okay? Hi, Vaughn, good afternoon, good evening, Samantha. All right, let's see. Tyler says, I'm so glad you talk about VAWA, all qualification, not just through marriage. Lots of attorneys only talk about VAWA and marriage. Yeah, I think it's really important that people know that there are other people who qualify for VAWA, especially children. When I tell you guys, like, when I, like, you know, as my husband told me, like, I cry over, like, some of my clients' cases, like, where I'm just like, I should get it together. Like, when I see children, and maybe that's because I'm a mom, like, some of the stuff that they go through or some of the things that their parent or their step parents say to them, it's so painful, you know. And the same thing, like, for parents, like, you know, it's just, you know, you might not think your parents, you know, you have the best parents, or you might have wished for a different parents, but sometimes, you know, these parents are doing what they can, you know, and everything they can. Like, a lot of these parents, a lot of abused parents that we see are parents who cross the border, and, you know, their children hold a lot of resentment towards them for crossing the border and feeling like, you know, they could have been richer, they could have had a better education. Why their parents, they've been here for so long, they still haven't gotten it together. But a lot of times these kids have no idea the sacrifice, you know, or the struggle, or why those people left their home country to bring those children here for a better life and for those kids to get status. So, it's really important that if you're a parent, that you know that if you're being abused by your child, one, you're not a failure. It doesn't say that you're a bad parent, that your child is abusive. So don't be afraid to apply. And no, you're not going to get your child in trouble, because I know that's also another concern, because even though your child is abusing you, it's much more difficult to accept that and to do something about it than if it's your spouse and you're like, you know what, he can go to hell, I don't care. So, and it's the same with children, and a lot of times, VAWA protects children under the age of 21, and you can do a late filing if you've turned 21, but before you turn 25. The only difference with that is by the time you hit 21, you won't be able to do an adjustment of status at the same time. So whenever, you have a child that could qualify for this, you want to try and do it before they hit that 21. Just so that they can, do the adjustment of status. And it's the same for kids. So Dinma says, I left my abusive marriage to a shelter, but I don't know what to fill in the address section of the I-485 if I am filing. So you want to talk to your shelter, the shelter that you are in. A lot of times they will have a safe address that you can use. If you're working with an attorney, which I recommend that you should be working with an attorney, you want to ask your attorney, or if you call us and you work with us, typically, as my clients will tell you, our clients use us for their safe address. So that way you always know where your mails are, okay? If you have a conditional green card and you've been divorced for a year ahead before you remove the conditions, can you file for removal early before it is time to remove a condition? This is a very good question, and the answer is yes. When you have a green card that is conditional, what does that mean? First of all, a conditional green card is a green card that they give you for 2 years. So if you look on your green card, if it says 2 years, it expires in 2 years, that is a conditional green card. Okay. If normally, if you're removing conditions in your green card with your spouse or with the parent that petitioned for you or whatever, normally you have to wait 90 days to the 2-year anniversary before you can submit it. However, if your spouse passes away, God forbid, you can file early. If you're in an abusive marriage, you can file early. If you're divorced, you can file early. The same applies to late filing. You just have to explain the late filing. So for instance, let's say your green card expired in 2020, and you didn't know that, you had an option, because a lot of people don't know. A lot of people, when the person's like, you know what, I'm not filing for you, and they're like, okay, well, that's the end of my green card. A lot of people don't know that they qualify, if their spouse is abusive or divorced, so they don't file. You can file late as well. You just want to explain your lateness. You must explain your lateness, but you can file late as well. I will tell you, like, we've had a client, the latest client we've had filed 12 years after the marriage. I'm not telling you to wait 12 years. Don't wait 12 years to be legal, but it happens. Okay. Let's see what else we have here. Okay, I'm gonna go to Instagram because my mouse is not here and I cannot scroll through this. Let's see if this will work. To scroll through some of these questions. Aziz says, I'm EWE with removal proceedings terminated, and I got my work permit and advanced parole from VAWA. Can I travel outside with advanced parole? Without seeing your stuff, I wouldn't tell you to do that. I would need to see your records and to see that it was truly terminated. Okay. Chantel says, do you have to have an apartment before you can file? What do you mean when you say, do you have to have an apartment before you can, and before you can file what? Like, what are you talking about? Explain a little bit better so I can understand what you're asking me. And then Kiara says, thank God for VAWA. So many immigrants don't know about VAWA. Please keep these videos coming. Oh, you're welcome. Okay, let me answer some more questions. Okay, so 𝐂𝐀𝐻𝐳 says, can I apply for VAWA if I need to go back to my home country for a while? Okay, I think I answered her already. Okay, and so this other person says, what do I file to get my ex to submit his military papers to finalize our divorce? Yeah, like I mentioned, I don't do divorce, unfortunately. You want to get a divorce lawyer in your home state, and hopefully they should be able to help you. Okay. Abba's child says, can I file for a green card after 7 years of divorce? This is a very good question. So if the question is, can you file for the green card based on your ex-spouse being an abusive spouse? The answer is no, you're no longer eligible. If your spouse is abusive or was abusive and you filed for divorce and you didn't know about VAWA, you have up until 2 years, 2 years to the dot, that you must submit your petition. If you don't submit your petition after 2 years, you can't. You're done, unfortunately. Okay. Stephen says, it's been more than 9 months since I've filed, only got biometrics done. What do you mean it's been more than 9 months? Are you talking about VAWA? If it's been more than 9 months since you submitted your VAWA, it's okay that in 9 months, that's all you've gotten is your biometrics. Hopefully what comes next for you, if you applied for adjustment of status, is your work permit, which should be coming any day soon. Most of our cases, adjustment of status attached. Work permits come within 5 months to 9 months, so you should hopefully get that. Once you get that, and I don't know if you got your prima facie and all those things, but once you get that, really it's a waiting game. VAWA cases take anywhere from 24 months to 2.5 years, so you're still well in the thick of it. So don't panic. Zanila says, how long after VAWA is approved do you get a green card interview? It depends. Again, this is very field office specific. Some clients will get an interview maybe 3 months later, some 6 months later, or thereabouts. So, the window, but generally before 12 months. I'll say most people will get it between like 3 to 6 months. Sometimes it might be a little later. It's a function of whoever the officer is assigned to you, their caseload. But I haven't seen any go over like 12 months if you've been approved. Okay. And that other, and I know some audience member here asked about that. And that's why in a case like that, I would want to do an inquiry to just see where the holdup is, which is why, it's really important that you're working with a lawyer, because, if your case is already approved, most lawyers are not trying to take the case, because it's like, well, what are we doing? So that's basically the timeline. Okay, let's see. So this person says, I have a work permit. Is it okay to do independent contract jobs and file my own taxes, or have to be employed by a company that does W-2? This is actually a very good question. You don't have to be employed by a company that does a W-2. As long as you have your work permit, you can work anyhow you want. All USCIS wants to see is that you are paying your taxes. That is all they care about. Okay? Okay. Let's see what else we have here. Denise says, can I start filing for my son in Jamaica after getting a prima facie approval? He's going through a very hard time. He has lost both his grandparents, whom were his legal guardian. Sorry about that. So when you say his legal guardian, like, did they adopt him? I hope not, because that means you've terminated your parental right. I hope not. The answer to your question is no, you cannot start filing for your son, because your son doesn't qualify to be filed for yet outside of the country. If your son was in the US, you can attach an application for him based on him being a derivative beneficiary. If it's outside the country, the only thing you can do is wait until your case has been approved. If your case has been approved, then You can then file the I-824, and once that's sent to the National Visa Center, you can do that. You can also file the I-824 at the same time you're filing your case, so that when it's approved, they will send his own portion to the National Visa Center. Okay. Cydia says, is Vermont Service Center the best for my VAWA case to be processed? So here's the thing. Vermont is the only office that processes VAWA. And as far as immigration goes, you don't get to pick where your case goes. You go based on where they tell you to send your stuff to. But Vermont is the only USCIS office that processes VAWA. Okay. Sherry Ann says, I did my marriage-based interview in November, and I haven't heard anything else since then. When can I submit an inquiry? I would say the time is about good now. You can submit an inquiry. You can either do a service inquiry. If not a service inquiry, you can also try to do, excuse me. You can also try to do congressional assistance, where you ask your local congressman or woman to advocate for you, reach out and find out what's going on with USCIS and why they haven't made a decision. There's a possibility that they could be investigating something on your, on your application. So just keep your T's crossed and your I's dotted, just in case, you have a home visit or anything like that. Celia says, if one files an I-360 concurrent with the I-485 in September 2020, did biometrics March 2021, got to prima facie, but no work permit, is that normal? Without knowing what you submitted in your I-765, I can't tell you whether it's normal or not. So we got to see what your 765 says. Okay. Okay. I'm going to take like 2 more questions and I will be jumping off. Okay. Oh, it's not allowing me to post this question. So I'm just going to read it out. So this person is asking, good afternoon. I'm in removal proceedings and my court date is in 2024. And I recently got my I-130 approved. What will I do next? Wonderful. That's good that you got your I-130 approved. Right now in President Biden's administration, there's something called prosecutorial discretion, basically where we can basically say to, DHS, which is Department of Homeland Security, look, there's no point of wasting government resources. Our client was approved for an I-130, so likely they're going to be approved for a 485. Join us in this motion. Let us ask the judge to terminate this proceeding to allow you to do your adjustment of status with USCIS. If they agree to join with you, then they will terminate that and then you can do your adjustment of status. Okay, so that's what you would need to do. Okay, let's see. All right, guys, let me just see what else we have here. Let's just start finding. For some reason today, I don't know, the writing on Instagram, it's so tiny. Maybe I need glasses, and because I'm wearing white, like I can't, a lighter color, I can't read it very well. If I get my prima facie, okay, I answered this one. Can a VAWA petitioner safely travel out of the country and return with advanced parole? Without knowing your immigration history, I can't tell you yes or no. Typically, if you're somebody who has a squeaky clean immigration history, never had an NTA is a notice to appear in front of an immigration judge, never had a deportation proceeding, this is your first petition in your entire life you're filing, sure, you can travel. But I don't know your own case, so I can't say. How long does it take if I refile my green card due to divorce decree? Holla, I need a little bit more context to be able to answer that one. Yeah. So Zanila says USCIS officers came to my house. It went bad. My husband wasn't home. They called him under pressure. They told him he married me as a favor. What is likely to happen and what can I do? Ah, man. Well, that's terrible. Well, did he marry you as a favor? At this point, there's nothing you can do until you get a notice of intent to deny. And once you get the notice of intent to deny, you can call our office, and we can see the notice of intent to deny and see whether it's salvageable. All is not lost, but it's definitely not sounding good. But we've turned around some miracles, so you never know. Okay, sorry. I want to know if they will revert back to my first marriage before I got married to the abuser, because my first marriage, my first man just sent me a divorce certificate and I got married to the abuser. I still don't understand the question. So I really don't understand the question, unfortunately. Jen says, what if I divorce my husband because things are not working out? You can divorce your spouse if things are not working out. If what's going on in your marriage arises to the level of cruelty and abusive behavior, then you can file for a VAWA petition on that basis. Debbie says, can I attend VAWA therapy session program different from the state where I filed? You need to attend. So therapists are licensed in states. So in order for you to attend therapy, you have to make sure that the person doing your therapy is licensed in the state that you live in. That's number one. Number two, if you file VAWA and you've moved in state A and you've moved to state B, you want to notify USCIS. This is one of the number one reason and the number one things that cause delay in people getting their paperwork or files getting stuck and lost. Because the more you move without notifying USCIS, they have to move these around because they don't have jurisdiction to make a decision on your case. So when you move, you want to, USCIS doesn't like excessive moving. I do know that immigrants, a lot of times, we're trying to, settle down, settle themselves. So we do see a lot of them moving, but you can't just be moving like every 6 months. I moved here, I moved here, I moved there. So you try to not move as much, like with to different states, and different like cities, like, because you could be in Tampa and then move to Orlando, two different field offices. They may have to transfer your files from Tampa to Orlando. So things like that, those are things that could get your stuff lost and delayed. Okay. Ernest says, I'm married to a U.S. citizen. Can I file for adjustment of status and citizenship together? Absolutely not. You can only file for adjustment of status if you entered into the U.S. with inspection. When that is approved, if you and your wife are still together and everything is wonderful, 3 years after your marriage, 3 years after your green card, you'll be eligible for citizenship, amongst other things that you need to show. When you get an I-765 and I-131 approved, what is it that USCIS sends you? SSN, ID, and AP. Okay. So on your I-765, you have the option to request your Social Security card. If you choose yes, they should send you your Social Security card. What happens when you get approved is these never come on the same day, never. It could take weeks for your Social Security card to come because it's coming from Social Security Administration and it come in Washington, D.C. So it's completely different from USCIS. When you get approved for travel permits and work permits, you can get it in two ways. You can get a card. This card will have your picture, which acts as your identification and proof of your authorized stay in the U.S. and authority to work. And then on the bottom, it will say that you're eligible for advanced parole. I mean, no, you're eligible. This also acts as your advanced parole. Advanced parole just means travel permit. However, because, early in the year, there was just a maddening delay in work permits, what USCIS started to do was they started to detach travel permits from work permits so that they could make a decision on work permits and get people's work permits out to them quicker. So some people will get just a work permit. And once they get the work permit, maybe a few months later or a few weeks later, they will get a travel permit. But instead of getting a travel permit card, your travel permit will be like a paper, like with your picture on the bottom. So that's also another option. We're still seeing very many people with the joint combination card, but we definitely see some people where they had to detach. Okay. Um, Mara Torres, this is the last question for today, guys. And then you got to tune in on Tuesday for anything else. Mara Torres says, hello, my attorney can't represent me anymore. He asked me if I want his colleague to represent me. How can this affect my case, VAWA? I don't. So is your attorney representing you for your VAWA case, or did he represent you for your marriage-based case? Maybe there's a conflict of interest, but it shouldn't affect you changing your lawyer. You can always change your lawyer. Okay. All right, guys. Well, I hope you guys have a great and restful weekend. I will be on live on Tuesdays. I'm going to actually do a survey on Instagram and Facebook to see what time works best for most of our audience for lives. And maybe I'll start doing the lives then at that time. So tune in though on Tuesday at 10 a.m. I will be live again. If I didn't get your questions answered, you can ask me again on Tuesday. All right, guys, I hope you have a wonderful weekend and talk to you guys soon. Bye.